Hello, everybody. Welcome to the No BS Zone. I'm Bernie Goldberg, for those of you who don't know, and I'm here with my good friend, who is also known among many, many people as the Renaissance man of the Rockies, John Daly. How are you? How you doing, John?
I'm doing good, Bernie. How about you?
Well, I think I'm okay, but we'll know more before this is over. At 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon Eastern Time, I sent John Daly a note about what we might discuss in today's No BS Zone. I want to read you exactly what I wrote. I said to John, I write this before we see what happens at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Safe bet, whatever happens, will produce something interesting for us to talk about. For that, I win the Understatement of the Year award. Something interesting that we might talk about? Okay, yeah, something interesting is right. By now, you know what happened. And by now, you've probably heard the arguments that both sides need to tone down the rhetoric. Fine, I'm for both sides toning down the rhetoric. The left says Donald Trump has to start, fine, Donald Trump needs to tone down the rhetoric. But both sides' argument isn't cutting it with me, not after Saturday night, not at the moment. I want to read you something. I read an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by a psychotherapist. Just read it this week. He said, when people are described as fundamentally dangerous or illegitimate, it changes how actions against them are seen. Okay, let's stop there. Donald Trump has been described as fundamentally dangerous and illegitimate, and it changes how actions against them are seen. Okay, back to the op-ed. For most people, that language remains mere language. That means if you're a liberal and you hear that, you don't vote for Donald Trump. You go to work the next day, you say you don't like him, but mere language is mere language. But for someone unstable, hearing it often enough can lower the psychological barrier to acting. It can begin to feel less like a choice and more like a kind of obligation. In other words, if other words are even necessary, if you're not playing with all 52 cards and one is described as fundamentally dangerous and illegitimate, and Donald Trump has certainly been described as an existential threat to democracy by liberals in this country, then actions against them changes. It's not words anymore. It becomes actions that are seen as a kind of obligation. So I did a little research, John, and everybody listening to us. I asked ChatGPT, how many times has Donald Trump been compared to Adolf Hitler? ChatGPT said, we don't have an exact number, but during his first full year in office in 2017, there were more than 3,000 articles that included both Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. And the next year, 2018, there were more than 2,400 articles. And this is important, John. That's just in mainstream media. That's just in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, not social media. And it's not even his current term in office, just his first 2 years in office, 2017 and 18. More than 3,000 articles the first year, more than 2,400 the second year. And then, before I toss to you, John, we heard from one of our new subscribers, a fellow named Barnes Moore, who sent me a list of things liberals have said in recent years. Now, the things I'm going to read you, nobody has said there should be violence. I want to be clear, but they put these things out into the atmosphere. Chris Cuomo, who I happen to think is a very bright and reasonable guy, Chris Cuomo said, who said protests have to be peaceful? Again, he wasn't saying they have to be violent. He just said, who said they have to be peaceful? Ariana Presley, the progressive congresswoman, there needs to be unrest in the streets. Kamala Harris, protests should not let up. She's not calling for violence, but she's saying protests should not let up. Nancy Pelosi Nancy Pelosi, I don't know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there should be. She didn't mean violent uprisings, but she said it. Okay? This screwball Virginia Attorney General candidate Jay Jones, who by the way won re-election, he said he wished he could shoot former Speaker of the Virginia House, a fellow named Todd Gilbert, wished he could shoot him in the head and urinate on Gilbert's grave, and that he hoped Gilbert's children died. And then there were Democratic politicians defending him against the Republican candidate. Now this fellow Jay Jones said he wished he hadn't said it, but of course he wished he hadn't said it. When it hits the fan, they all wish they hadn't said it. My point, John, and everybody listening, is that just as when sludge from a factory seeps into a stream and then into a river and then into our water supply, rhetorical sludge also seeps from podcasts and social media posts and cable TV into the bloodstream of America. I don't know what the shooter on Saturday night read. I don't know what he heard, but let's apply some common sense. It was out there in the atmosphere. The rhetorical sludge was out there. This man wasn't playing with all 52 cards. And just as the psychotherapist said, when people who are unstable hear these things, they feel an obligation to act on them. And I think that's what happened.
Okay. Well, no, I think that makes sense. I do think we can't have a broader conversation about this without bringing in that Trump says all kinds of unhinged things about his opponents, calls them traitors, calls them the enemy within. He suggested some should be executed. He's celebrated the deaths of his political opponents. All of this, none of this is an excuse for the other side. I think the rhetoric on both sides is very much out of control. We've been writing about this for years, Bernie. I mean, this has been a concern for us for a very long time. And so I'm not, I don't bring this stuff up from the Trump scene. You should see some of the stuff that you and I are called on social media, Bernie. Evil, pedophiles, I mean, you name it. I mean, just people that don't like what we say. It is bad. It's this. I don't bring this up as one side doing it as a whataboutism. It's not. I think it's all terrible. I want to see us be able to talk in a political manner that doesn't attribute the worst possible motives, the worst possible positions to the other side. And I do think it adds to this culture of violence that we've been seeing for a number of years now.
You're absolutely right about what Trump has said. It's all wrong. He should stop saying it. But it wasn't Trump's rhetoric, at least not directly, that got into the head of a crazy person. It was the left's rhetoric. And here's a point I'd like to make and get your thoughts on it, John.
Sure.
Let's go back into not too distant history, the 1970s. Richard Nixon beat George McGovern in 1972, I think. And Richard Nixon went to China and was able to normalize or semi-normalize relations with communist China. George McGovern could have never done that because conservatives would have called him a communist for going to China. Richard Nixon was able to do it because he was a conservative Republican. In the same way, it's not enough for conservatives and Republicans to say this has to stop. It takes prominent liberal Democrats to stand up and say this has to stop. Just as Nixon could open the doors to China and McGovern couldn't, it takes Jimmy Kimmel needs to stop doing what he's doing for 10 minutes and say, you know what, our side, meaning his side, the liberal side, our side needs to stop this kind of talk. and let's hope the other side follows. But our side needs to do it. George Clooney in Hollywood needs to say it. Barack Obama needs to say it, because as long as conservatives say it, liberals are going to make excuses and say both sides need to do it. And they're right, but it's not enough. We need prominent Democrats to stand up and say, our side, the liberal side, again, that's not my side or John's side, but they need to say, our side needs to stop this. It worked for Nixon. It could work again. But until that happens, nothing is going to change.
Well, and you do see in instances like this where people come out after the fact and denounce political violence. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it has to be proactive, and I do. I'm not as I do think it's very much a both sides problem, and we can point out there's certainly been more high profile examples lately of ideological liberals that are doing this. That was clearly the case with Charlie Kirk's assassin. He was a liberal. He was echoing a lot of the stuff you hear on the left. I think it was the case certainly with the congressional softball game shooter. We remember that. I think it seemed to be very much the case with this latest attempt on Donald Trump's life. I don't think the first two assassins were necessarily part of that. I would argue that the first one, we know that he was following Joe Biden's movements as well. He was very much interested in taking out some sort of high profile figure, not necessarily Trump. I think he was more sort of like a John Hinckley type situation with Reagan. The second guy was all over the place politically. Really kind of a whack job. But yeah, I think it's important that both sides do this, and we can't just pretend it's not a problem on both sides, based on how far people that are on the left have been able to get in what they tried to do to Donald Trump. It's interesting. I'd forgotten. A lot of people had brought up all of these incidents with Obama that happened under him, of him being targeted with political violence that was basically caught earlier, so it didn't become a big story. But yeah, I think it's a real problem. I know people will not like me saying this as a both sides thing, but I very much think it is, and I think that influential leaders on both sides of the aisle have to be hitting this a lot, especially in this time now that we've seen. Go ahead.
I am not arguing, John, and I think you know this, that it's not a both sides argument. It is a both sides argument. But when it was the nasty rhetoric, the violent rhetoric during Barack Obama's time in office, it wasn't liberals who were doing that. It was the right who was doing that. And when Donald Trump is in office, it's the left that's doing that. Both sides need to tone it down. Donald Trump needs to tone it down. I've said that in this just 10 minutes ago. But in this case, and recently, it's the left that needs to watch what it's saying. I want to go back and end this segment where I began. The psychotherapist in the Wall Street Journal. When people are described as fundamentally dangerous or illegitimate, it changes how actions against them are seen. For most people, that language remains mere language. But for someone unstable, hearing it often enough can lower the psychological barrier to acting. It can begin to feel less like a choice and more like a kind of obligation. The nasty rhetoric about Donald Trump, you could say Donald Trump is unfit for office. You could even say he's a threat to democracy. But when you talk about he's like a Nazi, he's like Hitler, he's an existential threat to the very existence of the United States of America as we know it, crazy people hear things and act on them. That is likely what happened on Saturday night. Okay.
Yeah.
I got this.
Can I just add one more thing, Bernie?
Yeah,
I will say too, I think, yeah, I agree with all that. And I think it's important that when the people who commit political violence do have to have the book thrown at them, and as hardly as possible, which again, when we brought this up, I do not like the pardoning of people who commit political violence. I think that sends a bad signal as well. But that's a different part of this. I think people need to speak out very strongly against it, and also throw the book at these people who commit political violence.
Before we move on, I want to make sure I understood something. Are you saying on social media people are calling you and me all sorts of bad things?
Oh yeah. Regularly. So I've made this joke many times before, but
you know, John, and many people don't. I don't follow social media.
that's
and
right.
John apparently has been careful enough not to share what those things are. But I'm curious. Give me an example of what people have said about me.
Oh, I mean, so Bernie, you get a lot of anti-Semitic stuff, unsurprisingly. I do too, despite being Irish. I'm not really sure, but I get called a lot of anti-Semitic slurs. So yeah, I made this comment before. I monitor Bernie's social media much more closely than Bernie does, so I see a lot of things he doesn't. But yeah, social media is such a cesspool. I mean, we've been called Hitler regularly. Been called all kinds of pedophiles. That's another one that people throw out willy-nilly. So yeah, when we've had discussions about on the podcast about Epstein, the Epstein files, where we think certain things are overblown about it, and so then we of course because we say it's overblown, get called pedophiles because we are trying to downplay this whole situation, Bernie. So according to these people,
do me a favor, send me some of that stuff when it comes across. Okay, I'm
okay.
just curious. All right.
Yeah. No, I will. It'll bring you down, but I'll do that since you requested it.
All right. Let's move on to something that I'm not going to say it puzzles me, but I find it interesting in that kind of way. Can we agree that everyone other than the ruling regime in Tehran is against Iran getting a nuclear weapon? Democrats are against it. Republicans are against it. Liberals, progressives are against it. Everybody's against it. But at the same time, according to polls, 94% of Democrats and 78% of independents say the war lacks sufficient justification. 94% of Democrats say it lacks sufficient justification. Okay, so let's say Donald Trump did a whole bunch of things wrong. Let's say he didn't explain it to the American people before he started the war. He didn't explain it to Congress. He didn't talk to our allies. He threatens to wipe out the entire Iranian civilization. If he did it, he'd be a war criminal. If he doesn't do it, they call him Taco. Trump always chickens out, TACO, and he's a wuss. Let's say he did everything wrong, for argument's sake. I still don't get it. Nobody wants Tehran to have a nuclear bomb, but 94% of Democrats say the war lacks sufficient justification. Does that mean that there was not an imminent threat? Would Democrats, the 94% of Democrats, think that Donald Trump should have waited until there was an imminent threat? Because I guarantee you, if he waited until there was an imminent threat, 94% of Democrats would trash him for waiting too long before he took action. So I mean, this comes down to a fundamental question for me. Do Democrats hate Donald Trump more, not than they hate the Iranian regime, but do Democrats hate Donald Trump more than anything Donald Trump does? Is everything he does going to be wrong as far as a majority of Democrats are concerned? John.
Well, yeah, there's obviously a partisan part to this. I do think someone can absolutely believe the war is unjustified while not hating Trump more than the Iranian regime. And I think there's lots of different lines of rationale for that. You brought up the imminent threat thing. So the Trump administration has changed explanations for the war many times since it started, including the claim that there was this imminent nuclear threat. There was not an imminent nuclear threat. There was a nuclear threat, but their program has largely been under rubble since last summer when we dropped those bombs. Courtesy of the United States, courtesy of Israel. Again, the threat is there long term, but when people hear that this was done in the name of stopping this nuclear imminent threat, I can see them saying, well, in their mind, this is not justified. So to be clear, before I get any longer, I think we should have done what we're doing. I think we should have gone after Iran. So, another angle that people have, there's this general lack of understanding by millions of Americans as to the severity of the threat that Iran does pose, not just to the region, but also to American interests and American citizens. A lot of people just don't have clue about foreign policy stuff. They're more concerned about the price of gasoline. They know that we know that a lot of Americans prioritize cost of living over everything. So they see this war that they've sort of been confused about from the beginning, driving up these gas prices, and that's all they see, So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily, but there is a point that you make that there is a partisan part to this for sure, and I think we actually saw it under Biden too, when Russia first invaded Ukraine. Everybody was on board with Ukraine. Slowly over time, support on the Republican side for Ukraine kept going down. I blame the Tucker Carlson wing for a lot of this stuff, but I thought it was interesting when Biden left office and when Trump won, almost overnight, Republican support for helping Ukraine started rising up, even as Trump kept slamming Ukraine and blaming them for the war. Republican base support went up, and I think a lot of people on the Republican side under Biden just wanted him to have a loss of some kind, and they would see Ukraine going down under his watch to be a political hit on him. And I think it's a real thing, and it's troubling.
Forgive me, everybody, for stating the obvious. Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. What he should have done, and I'm not going to write his speech for him, but somebody should have put words similar to what I'm about to say in Donald Trump's mouth. He should have gone to the American people, not on a tarmac, not outside the White House in front of a press line, but in the Oval Office, and say, we are going to war. Tonight, we have gone to war with Iran. And I want to explain to you, my fellow Americans, why. They have the capacity to create either a nuclear bomb or a nuclear device that could be smuggled into a Western country, even the United States, in a suitcase. And it could cause grave, grave damage. Is the threat imminent? We think it is. But even if it isn't, if we wait until it is imminent, it will be too late, because then they will have missiles surrounding their nuclear device, and it'll be much more difficult to get to it. I hope this won't last long. I need your support, my fellow Americans. Tonight, our brave airmen, soldiers, sailors are at war in our name. God be with them. Thank you, my fellow. He could have said something like that. Now, I'm not a speechwriter, but he didn't say anything like that, John. He didn't say anything like that. But still, I want to be very clear about this. When 94% of Democrats say the war lacks sufficient justification, nothing he could have said, in my mind, maybe that 94% would have gone down to 90%. But nothing he could have said would have been sufficient, because we've reached the point, and this is very dangerous. This hyperpolarization is very dangerous, far more dangerous than anything else out there, far more dangerous than climate change and things like that. They would have been against anything he said, any way he said it. And that's a very bad thing. They are no longer the loyal opposition any more than Republicans are the loyal opposition when a liberal or progressive Democrat becomes president again. Could you imagine if AOC becomes president? You think there's going to be a loyal opposition on the right? There's going to be nothing she does is good enough. Nothing she does is correct enough. That's what we're up against, and that's very bad. And right now, Donald Trump is the president, and Democrats are not the loyal opposition; they are the resistance.
Yeah, and it's possible Trump put that into his calculation of not even bothering, knowing that no matter what he did on Iran, he would get this overwhelming pushback. That said, I agree with you. I think he still should have done it. There are lots of valid criticisms of the Iraq War from many years ago, but for all of those, Bush did make a case over weeks and months about going to Iraq, making this case in public view. He got Congress on board for it. There was a lot of U.S. approval for it at the time. So there is definitely value in doing that. It's in getting support behind what you're doing, because when you do something provocative like this, and I can think it's warranted, you can think it's warranted, but you really do, when you commit to something like this, you have to try and get some public support behind it. Otherwise, the public's going to reject it. And a lot of it is partisanship for sure, but a lot of it's independence. I think what was it, 70-something% you said don't support it either. So there's something to be said for that.
78%.
Yeah.
But let's remember what Bush did, based on really, really bad intelligence about weapons that Saddam Hussein supposedly had. That was not long after 9/11.
Right. We were less polarized at that point.
You can get a lot of Americans. I mean, Bush's popularity was overwhelming at that time. Okay. Yeah. Let me move on to one more thing here before we say goodbye to everybody. We're in the midst, as we speak, of Donald Trump trying to get a deal with the regime in Iran. And I'm trying to figure out who wants the deal more. I think Donald Trump wants to deal more, because I think the Iranians are playing him. They're just playing him in a way that he didn't see coming. When you go into a war or anything of consequence, even in your private life, you better play the movie through in your head to the conclusion. You better figure out not just how to get into the war, but how you're going to get out of the war. And I think Donald Trump is looking for the proverbial off-ramp right now. And the Iranians are saying, he's not going to bomb us into the Stone Age. He's not going to wipe out our entire civilization. He's just talking. And we're going to wait, at least try to make his life miserable through the midterms, maybe even wait for a Democrat to be president in 2028, who we could deal with and get more out of. I just think Donald Trump needs this solution, needs this negotiation more than the Iranians do, or at least more than the Iranians think they do. And I think Donald Trump is looking for a way out more than the Iranians are. I want to get your thoughts on that. One more thing. Donald Trump said he would bomb them to the Stone Age, would wipe out their entire civilization. I'm not entirely clear that he won't do that. I don't think he will. I mean, MAGA would support it, but almost nobody else would. But I'm wondering if that's playing, because that message wasn't intended for us. That message was intended for the regime in Tehran. I think they don't believe it, but they got to be thinking about, would this crazy president really do it? That's something they may be thinking about.
Yeah, it's funny. If you go way back to 2016, when Trump was become the Republican nominee, I wrote columns on this where I'm like, him kind of coming across like a crazy man actually has some value potentially to other countries, bad actors who may think this guy is unstable, and so they don't want to do anything too bad to us because he's crazy. But yeah, there is value to that. So, but I never understood the whole point of doing it like on social media as opposed to sending that message directly to the other people. But I guess part of that makes sense too, just because of how splintered the regime is right now. But just Trump's view of foreign policy, I think a lot of people sort of get it wrong. He ran this most recent time that he ran in 2024. He ran as the peace president, the no more wars in the Middle East president, And I don't think people should have ever taken him at his word on that. You know, Trump has never been shy, contrary to popular belief, about using our military, including in the Middle East. But his strong preference has always been these quick, concentrated strikes that really show off the United States' overwhelming military might, along with this message of, you know, we can do these things and be done with them before you ever even knew what hit you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's certainly what Venezuela was, which we saw there. And I think that's clearly what Trump thought Iran would be. But Iran was never going to be that easy. It's too complex of a situation. So this war has gone on for longer than he has liked, and I think he is eager to wrap it up. And I do worry he is going to make these concessions to the Iranians that he shouldn't make, because he is worried about how long this takes. He didn't want to.
This leads to my final question. Where do you think this is heading?
I think he'll end up conceding things that he shouldn't. I don't know exactly, but you know, we've seen. I keep bringing up this parallel with Ukraine, but I think it's important. He has been trying to end that conflict for some time now, on Russia's terms. You know, he sees that as the easiest way to end this conflict, is just to kind of give Russia what it wants, because Trump, mistakenly, as it turns out, believes that, you know, Ukraine didn't have the cards. He used that term a number of times, and I think he just wants to kind of wipe his hands with it. And when you go back to Iran, I think that's what I'm afraid he's going to do. I don't know exactly what that means.
You know what, John? And if he does that, everybody who says they want an end to the war tomorrow, or they want the end of the war 10 minutes from now, they're going to criticize him for getting nothing out of this, for going to war and wasting everybody's time and American lives, the lives of, I think it is 17 service members. If he ends it the way you described, and you may be right. I'm not arguing with that for a second. If that happens, all the people, especially on the left, who say we want this war to end immediately, are going to criticize him for ending the war immediately on those terms.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. For his detractors on the left, or the people that are committed to his failure, he can't do anything that's gonna save him from being criticized for that. So I think that said, my personal view is that he should do whatever he can to knock the regime out. If he can't do it himself, along with Israel, I think arming the opposition in Iran would be the way to do it. But yeah, I think he has gone this far, and I feel that if he kind of loses his nerve at this point and leaves, which I think there's a very likely possibility of that happening, it's going to be a bad thing, because I think he's already done so much right now. I think it makes sense to do what he can to remove the regime at this point. But I worry that that's not going to happen.
Okay, you get the last word. Let me end with two things. One, I want to thank everybody for staying with us. I want to thank all our new subscribers. Do me one favor, please tell your friends about us. Give a gift subscription to a friend or somebody who you think would hate what John and I have to say just to make their lives miserable. Do that for me. I'd appreciate it. And the second thing is, John, I want you to send me the things people have said about me, because I'm not going to get a lawyer to sue them or anything. Nothing.
Right.
But I think I want to write about it. I have an idea for a column. Send it to me, okay?
I will do that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.